Today, we'll get a little bit into flip-flop lockdowns, cultural coups, and we'll take you around the world. A lot more coming right up. Welcome to your Monday morning on Black Spring with Autumn. If it's your first time in, thank you so much for joining me. And I want to give a shout out to the loyal patrons as well as you, the subscribers. Shout out to Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, Angel's Army, the former Angel Munez Variety Show, Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, Little Miss Goth, and a special shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you guys so much for all that you do to support the channel, and shout out to the loyal subscribers as well. Shout out to David Furman, and good morning, Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Dealing with a few issues with the host StreamYard, but hopefully I'll have that resolved before the end of the day. Shout out to Battery Addiction. Thank you guys so much for coming in and joining me on your Monday. So we have quite a bit to get into, and I just want to give you guys just a chance to get in, and also like to thank you guys for taking the care to hit that like or unlike button, as well as to share if you dare on this segment of Black Spring. Also to just make sure that you are still subscribed. Good morning to you, old head dudes. Thank you guys so much. Now we have quite a bit to get into today, and we have quite a few what I'm considering the cultural coups that are happening. I don't know if I want to use an S. The cultural coup we have everything from, of course, the typical progressive liberals. We have, it seems like the feminine or the feminist are, to me, they seem to be pretty well behind many of these attacks on culture, or they just want to. That's the thing that's happening that I want to get into generally about how the liberals and progressives are trying to reshape this country in their own image. It's not just a left bit of, or an elite kind of a paradigm, but they're being assisted, or they have the reinforcement. They have the power, and they have the elites behind them. But certainly, yes, we have a ton of culture coups. We're going to get into quite a few stories. We're going to start with, of course, we're going to start with the executive order, and probably go into, the results, what we've seen from the flip-flop on the lockdowns. And we're going to even go into the cultural realm, in which we talk about these attacks on like subject matters, like mathematics. We have what I consider a feminist attack on mathematics. Okay, we have that going on. We also have, going to take you a little bit around the world, and where we'll deal with a little bit of Nigerian Christians being under attack, it appears. So here again, we have so much conflict going on, so much chaos, and who's going to go down into the chaos and try to mitigate some of these circumstances, or some of the attacks, and try to restore some level of order. You've got this rush and this flood of attacks nationwide, and it's not just nationwide, it's worldwide. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that into focus. So let's go ahead and start out with, just generally, if you haven't heard by now, of course, that the president actually signed executive orders over the weekend. And of course, the political backlash is, of course, outrage. And we'll get into that. I just want to do a shout out to everybody that's in the stream. Shout out to DJ Vision Barnett. Thank you guys so much for your patience. DJ Vision Barnett, I will be reaching out to you very soon. Thank you so much for coming in. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Thank you guys so much. Shout out to Old Head Deuce. Thank you for coming in. Battery Addiction. Appreciate you guys for taking care on those channelytics for me. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk a little bit about the, go into a little bit on the executive orders. Of course, the executive order, just generally, we know that the executive order covered many components, or covered quite a few components. And actually, to me, what he's actually done, he's actually exposed the left quite a bit. And he's done this, of course, in a way in which, is unprecedented for a president to take some of the positions or the stances that he has taken. Now, I do want to start off before I get into this just by saying I'm not a proponent for, executive orders. Of course, we want long-term resolutions. We want things to be done, of course, with the balance of power, if you will, in check. But when we look at the situation, we've got a lot of unique things going on here. It's a storm. It's a storm of things. But I don't know. I'm not sure if he's going to receive, what type of pushback is he going to receive, or is he going to be? Are they going to try to make some kind of legal case out of it? I mean, who knows? They will throw everything at him, but it's actually exposing more. I mean, the left, they operate outside of their office all the time. Not to say that I don't want to put it in this way, but for the lack of a better phrase, that, two wrongs make a right. But this is not, Congress they are policy makers, but they can't seem to do that without being conflicted or being corrupt. And I do mean the left and the right paradigm. You also have rhinos, and you have Republicans that are just as culpable, or just as, they have the same pattern. They have patterns of voting with Democrats and not upholding their oath of office. So that's pretty consistent, is what we have seen. So I want to take you to a little bit of a story on the executive order and the extension of some of the benefits for Americans that actually need to see a level of relief, whether it's at 75% or whatever. But, the negotiation table, I think he just rolled it up and say, I'm going to do something for the people. And, of course, he made some other mentions of the payroll tax holiday. Of course, we'll get into those things, but just generally, we need, of course, I would rather see some long-term solutions, but we have to have an actual functioning government. And I don't think that our government is functioning very well, because it's pretty corrupt, is from what I can see. There's too many entanglements. There's too many NGOs. There's too much special interest. It's just, there's always going to be, in this case, we cannot have if you want to say, a rule of law or law of the land prevail with all of these things that were never intended, with all these violations from the servants, those congressmen and women. We cannot have that. So we'll find out. So of course, that's going to be a developing story, as everything. It's just, we have waves of stories that happen these days. We don't quite get a end or a closed book. We just keep having stories, developing stories. And so looks like we even had an opining, Ted Wheeler. He's changing his opinion. So, every now and then the left starts to go back to the center, and I'm not sure what hand they're playing right now, but I think they're running out of their hands to play. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment. David Furman, thank you so much for coming in. How are you? So let's get into just a little bit on the executive order. And then we'll go into, I have a report for you on the lockdowns, some perspective on the lockdowns, and also what the president has said about lockdowns, and also what I refer to as Fauci, what he has said on what he said as of right now. I call him flip-flop Fauci. We'll talk a little bit about that. But thank you guys so much for coming in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. I hope you guys are doing well on your Monday, and it is Monday. Very much Monday. So, of course, with every week we have we have, who knows, it's like the news, even it goes on and on and on. It's perpetual. So we're going to do just a little bit of some specifics. We'll try to get some specifics out of this. So shout out to everybody that's in the stream. Thank you so much. Chrysler Imperial H says, I know it'll never happen, but I wish they do special interest. Do away. Well, they won't. I mean, I think it's just, there's just a lot of nefarious things that have gone on, and they can't. It's like to me, I guess being a part of Washington, D.C., unfortunately, I don't know if you can be a part. Can you? How many people are actually there that are not quite, that are not either corrupted or tainted by, the special interest, or maybe a nefarious proposition that has nothing to do with the American people. It's about, their own sustainability, and what I call that's the former technocracy is what we talk about on here. So what I want to do is I just want to bring you just a little bit on some specifics from that executive order, and then bring you the other story, and we'll go on. We have some sound bites for quite a few things, and hope you guys are doing well. Once again, thank you so much for joining me on this segment. So we'll see how everything plays out, but it's certainly not going to be it's not going to be put to bed very, very soon. I would think, it's just an expose. Are they going to expose themselves even more for delaying relief, if you will? All right, so I'm going to bring you some coverage here. Hope everybody's doing well on your Monday. I appreciate you guys for taking care with those actual. Appreciate you guys taking care with the channelytics. I'm going to bring you some coverage right now. All right. Shout out to Robert L. and the rapper 10,000. How are you guys doing? Thank you guys so much for coming in. Let me just read this really quickly. Robert 10,000, the rapper 10,000 says, all right, so I'm going to bring you just a little bit of that coverage, and we'll see the specifics. And yeah, a lot, of course, there's always something going on politically, but I do think that Trump's winning in many ways. So we'll see what happens. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Oh, thanks so much, Battery Addiction. I wanted to say this. I'll talk about it a little bit later. We're going to have some extra things coming out to the memberships. There's going to be some extra features. And shout out to Derek C. Williams, wherever you are. Thank you so much for sharing out the stream. Thank you for throwing that caution. I really appreciate it. So with that said, I'll go ahead and take you guys to take you a little bit of the remarks, or a little bit of coverage. Thank you so much.
reach an agreement with Democrats on additional China virus relief. Already, my administration has enacted over $3 trillion in historic relief, saving many tens of millions of dollars in jobs. And you see how fast the economy is coming back. It does look like it's going to be a very sharp V. We have a tremendous enthusiasm, tremendous spirit, and tremendous job growth. We set a record on number of jobs in the last 3 months. It's the most jobs ever created in a 3-month period during a 3-month period. That's great. Before we begin, I've just signed 2 bills that are great for our vets. Our vets are very special. We passed choice, as you know, Veterans Choice and Veterans Accountability. And they've been trying to get that passed for decades and decades and decades, and no president's ever been able to do it. And we got it done, so veterans have choice. And now you have accountability that if you don't love your vets, if you're in the VA and you don't love the vets or take care of the vets, you can actually get fired if you don't do your job. We want people that love our vets. The first expands the eligibility for vets with blindness in both eyes. So we have an expansion of benefits, an expansion of various elements of being and working with the VA for vets with blindness and in particular blindness in both eyes. And we have a lot of problems with blindness in the VA, and we're doing something about it. They've been talking about this for many years. So that is expanding eligibility for vets with blindness in both eyes, okay? Second is requires the VA to establish a treatment court program for vets who need treatment rather than punishment for certain non-violent crimes. And you know what that all means. And it's really something that they've been trying to get done for a long time. The second requires the VA to establish a treatment court. So this is a treatment court program for vets who need treatment rather than punishment for certain non-violent crimes. Okay, I think it's self-explanatory. We've wanted this for a long time. They've been trying to get it for a long time, and now we have it. And I want to thank everybody for helping us get that done. We had a lot of support from a lot of great people, including people in the VA. In the current negotiation,
All right, thanks so much, guys. That's not quite the right clip there, but here again, that we're going to get into, we may even come back to it, but I want to take you to a bit of a story in which we have, of course, we're going to have some commentary and some studies to share with you guys. So once again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So we will come back to those remarks and some of the components of the actual executive orders, because I know it's pretty important overall to everyone. And yeah, so we'll keep going with that. Thank you guys so much. And just a word from our friends at the JBS. Thank you guys so much.
This segment of our show is brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. The JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that's been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education, training, and development of the American voters.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So right now I'm going to take you to a story or report actually that comes from the vetted source, the TNA. Now it's destroying America for power. Lockdowns may stop Trump, but not pandemics. Now this was written by Selwyn Duke. And according to this article, I might jump around just a bit. It's not a very long article, but Dr. Anthony Fauci recently said that the United States doesn't need another lockdown. What he didn't say is that we never needed the first one to begin with, as the wide-scale lockdown was an untried strategy driven by politics and not science, and it has now become clear and unmitigated failure. So I would agree. All right, attorney Stacey Rudin makes this point in a Saturday Real Clear Politics piece titled, quote, "The Myth That Lockdowns Stop Pandemics," end quote. Rudin opens discussing how man's acceptance of superstition is due to a tendency to confuse cause and effect. For example, rain dances to remedy droughts would always be followed by precipitation eventually, quote, vindicating, end quote, a tribal leader's judgment. Rudin mentions that thanks to science, we now know such superstition is nonsense. Yet today we have something similar, COVID ritual. It involves behavior such as, quote, social distancing, end quote, prescribing a magical, quote, 6 feet, end quote, of space between people. Never mind that the prescribed distance is 4.92 feet in Germany and 3 in Sweden. Perhaps the virus behaves differently under the metric system. And COVID ritual also involves having whole populations wear masks in indoor public places and outdoor crowds. Never mind that there is a difference between a trained physician wearing the ideal mask, fitted, disinfected, and used properly, and having the average Joe wear what may become a petri dish on his face. The ritual also entails the scientific obscurantist notion that slowing this virus's spread, prolonging the process of herd immunity, in other words, is a good thing. But whatever the ritual involves, decreased virus-induced mortality and pathogen spread will, like the rain, eventually become reality, and politicians can take credit for it as long as people remain confused about cause and effect. All right, so we'll continue here. It says, I've often cited studies showing not only don't lockdowns save lives, but they can actually cause more death than the COVID-19 pandemic would. Rudin provides more interesting information in regard, writing that when China first deployed the lockdown in January to, quote, defeat COVID-19, end quote, the Washington Post approvingly quoted a Georgetown University professor as saying, quote, "The truth is, those kinds of lockdowns are very rare and never effective," end quote. In March, Imperial College London's dire projections influenced the White House, but a careful reading of the advice contained in the Imperial College report reveals that its authors knew lockdown alone could not eliminate any infections, only delay them. Quote, "The most successful strategy is at temporary suppression," end quote, it stated. Quote, the later epidemic is predicted to be in the absence of vaccination due to lesser buildup of herd immunity, end quote. So we have the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention pandemic planning document states non-pharmaceutical interventions such as social distancing are ineffective once a disease infects 1% of a region's population. Now, literature on this subject is unanimous worldwide. According to the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, quote, "There are no historical observations or scientific studies that support the confinement by quarantine of groups of possibly infected people for extended periods in order to slow the spread," end quote. Okay, so we have just a little bit more of a study, some studies that we have that basically make this look more like an unmitigated failure. And as I said before, I consider Fauci a flopper. So here again, to round this one out, it says, in this vein, note what the Illinois Department of Public Health stated in their emergency plans for dealing with contagious diseases such as influenza, published in 2015. Quote, "Quarantine, a period of isolation to prevention disease spread, is not effective in controlling multiple influenza outbreaks in large immunologically naive populations because the disease spreads too rapidly to identify and to control chains of transmission," end quote. Quote, even if quarantine were somewhat effective in controlling influenza in large populations, it would not be feasible to implement and enforce with available resources and would damage the economy by reducing the workforce, end quote. The department continued, quote, most people will voluntarily quarantine themselves in their home, end quote. You can probably find enough such statements from health authorities the world over to fill a book. And Rudin provides an anecdote aligning with this truth, but more compelling is what she relates about Sweden, whose coronavirus management I've often cited myself. Quote, publicly available data shows no causal relationship between government orders and the pandemic mortality outcomes, end quote. Rudin writes, quote, Sweden's all-cause per capita mortality for 2020 is approximately 290 per million above the prior five-year average, while lockdown-loving New Jersey is almost 1,900 per million above the prior 5-year average, and Michigan is over 700 per million. In case you suspect Sweden naturally locked down on its own, mobility data reveals it didn't. So here you got Rudin's points between the US, I guess the same size, the different size cities in comparison to the Swedish model is what he seems to be comparing here. So Rudin points out that the mainstream media won't mention Sweden except to misrepresent and impugn its efforts. But for the same reason, there's another place unmentioned, South Dakota. The MSM wouldn't want you to know that despite the state never locking down and not ravaging its economy and having no mask mandate, it has, quote, seen only 15 deaths and around 500 new cases, end quote, wrote PJ Media's Megan Fox Tuesday. In fact, this chart shows that South Dakota has fewer deaths relative to the population than most other states. The data are definitive. Lockdowns are pointless. Bull in a china shop measures that do not save lives but destroy them. Citizens should not tolerate talk of their reinstitution or perpetuation and politicians responsible for visiting them upon us. One of American history's greatest blunders should be ousted from office and never work in public service again. For as Rudin concludes on Twitter, our pandemic response, quote, was always all about politics, end quote. And while it may or may not help defeat President Trump, one thing is certain, destroying your nation for power is evil. And finally, of course, people can engage in the COVID ritual privately on their own dime and time if they wish. And Fauci can even lead them in a COVID dance, which is fitting because he dances around issues as well as anyone. But the rest of us should look at the science and let these moral primitives indulge their superstition alone. So that's from Selwyn Duke of the TNA. So I find that to be a little bit, that's an interesting take on all that's going on. Thank you so much. Shout out to Theology Forums, Killer Whale Channels. Thank you so much for coming in on your Monday. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing it out. Thank you guys so much for all you do and taking care with those channelytics. Shout out to Battery Addiction. So we will move on. Thank you so much. Shout out to Newman Outdoors. It's been a lifetime, Newman Outdoors. Hope you're doing well. Luciano, shout out to you. Quite a few people coming in on this Monday. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do, we're going to move on. Maybe we'll come back to, the specs or whatnot in the executive order later. I wanted to pull that out now is what I wanted to do. But I'm not sure that the mainstream actually covered that. It's very difficult to get reports that have some level of veracity, because you guys know by now that these reporters, their job is to report and not, but then they come on, they show up with this, they want to debate and yell and grandstand and do all of these parlor tricks, and then they have a unique opportunity to cover a story, and they blow it. Shout out to you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So let's go on to the next story. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So we got into this just a little bit earlier. We're talking about, like, today we do, of course, we have our politics that's ongoing, but we're going to talk a little bit, of course, more about the cultural things that are happening around the country, and what I call the progressive effemination coup, and along with what's happening around the world. And it seems to be there's an overall attack on Western civilization or Western value. I mean, it's a global attack, and I'll tell you where that comes from in just a bit. But it seems that we have, the next story I'm going to take you to, it's going to be involving a professor, and how she thinks that she's from Brooklyn College. I'm going to take you to that clip. So we'll start with we'll bring you that story for the first part of your culture coup, if you will. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks so much, guys. So I'm going to bring you this one. All right, so this one's coming from a Brooklyn College education professor. So this is why I'm saying this is why I'm talking about the battles that we're dealing with. These are huge battles, and we've conceded too much. So that's my reference, and that's not me being Debbie Downer or negative Nancy, but I'm saying we can't afford to lose these educational battles. So here we go. Liberal supremacy coming right up. All right, according to Breitbart, the Brooklyn College education professor claims that math is, quote, white supremacist patriarchy. Got enough to start your word salad. Sprinkle your word salad with that. So white supremacist patriarchy. All right. This is written by Tom Cicada. All right. So according to this story, the Brooklyn College professor of math education, Lori Rubel, argued this week on Twitter that the mathematical equation 2 + 2 = 4, quote, reeks of white supremacist patriarchy, end quote. Rubel's tweet was retweeted and promoted by several academics at universities and colleges around the nation. All right, so according to a report by Campus Reform, Brooklyn College professor Lori Rubel, who teaches math education, tried to make the case this week that basic math is, quote, white supremacist, end quote. All right, so the tweets are part of a larger trend in recent scholarship by American academics, many of which have argued that, quote, the objective truth, end quote, is a social construct. All right, so according to this, quote, the idea that math, quote, or data is culturally neutral or in any way objective is a myth. I'm ready to move on with that understanding. Who's coming with me? End quote. Rubel wrote in a tweet, quote, along with the, of course, math is neutral because 2 + 2 = 4 trope and the related and the creepy math is pure and protect math reeks of white supremacist patriarchy, end quote. Rubel added, quote, I'd rather think on nurturing people and protecting the planet with math in service of them goals, end quote. Those are her words, ladies and gentlemen. All right, several academics from institutions around the nation chimed in. Harvard PhD candidate Kareem Carr suggested that math should be reevaluated because it was primarily developed by white men. Quote, people say it's subjectivism to ask if math is Western. I don't get that. It's an objective fact that some groups were more involved in the creation of modern math than others, end quote, Carr said. Quote, they may have been trying to make it objective, but it's not stupid to ask if they actually succeeded, end quote. A few academics have pushed back, James Lindsay, one of the academics behind a series of hoax papers that were published in, quote, social justice journals, reminded Rubel and her peers that mathematical truths are objective. All right, quote, it's certainly the case, and the woke need to be held firmly to the point that feats of engineering like space travel and rocketry utterly depend upon accepting stable meanings of mathematical statements like 2 + 2 = 4 as objectively true, not mere accidents of culture. That's according to James Lindsay. So what you see before you is, of course, his pushback and to the woke. So yeah, so there you go. This is what I'm talking about, the cultural kinds of coups, and they are brought to you by the struggling feminist. Okay, so the same type of thing. So this is our what do you want to call it? Our 21st century, or what do you want to call it? The woke culture feminist. Okay, so I mean, okay, we get it. We get it that the 1960s, that the feminists were struggling to not be relegated to making pamphlets and making coffee during these revolutionary movements by, like, say, for instance, the group, the Weatherman Underground. You know, they were power struggling back then, but now the struggle is, as she said, as Rubel just said, oh, well, I'd rather be taking care of people and the planet. So this is the thing. This is what I'm saying. This is another attack. I don't find that all of these attacks are coming from a very different place. I think they're all coming from very similar places. They want to undo Western civilization, Western norms, and they want to reshape it in their own image. Whether you like it or not, they know what's best. Apparently, they know what's best for everyone. And I don't know where, to me, this type of thing to me comes from. It's more of this whole patriarchy thing it seems to come from a bitter place. Like, it's attacking men all the time. If they can't effeminate the man, they've got to attack him and say that he's the reason for the struggles, or he's not objective. He's made everything bad, and we can do it better. So there again, it's just another version of the struggle, and I don't think they're ever going to be successful, because I would assert that they should try working on themselves and their misery, and stop telling everyone else, stop using the rest of the country or groups of people as subordinates. I mean, every day they're running around. Now they want math to admit that. Now they're trying to gut check math. Oh, admit you're an oppressor, math. Admit you're a supremacist, or you hold people down. Come on. This is getting it's pretty sick, and I really think it's pathetic that Twitter is the public square, apparently, okay? But it's not the college square. But they use this, but nobody else can have, I don't think that they would accept a conservative, or they don't seem to accept anybody else's assertions. And there's the bias. They're not tolerant. They claim to be tolerant, but they're not. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Let's see, I'm going to clear that one out for you guys. Thank you guys so much for coming in on your Monday. I really appreciate it. And I am working out my StreamYard issues. Looking a little different today, but I'm working on it. Not to worry. Let's see. The rapper says it comes from an inferiority complex some of these feminist women have. Well, it's just, it just seems to be their way or the highway. They're going to wreck it. They're going to wreck you if they can't rule. It's all or nothing. I think, but I will tell you this, it does kind of go back to that whole BLM thing. Well, it's supposed to be Black Lives Matter. No, it's not. It's not. They use intersectionality. They use race, women struggles to flip things, to overthrow things. And that's not original. That's what the revolution is. It's always about the revolution. It's never really about any of these specific groups, or they just want what's best for you. It's about their utopia prevailing, and they don't care if they have to they'll take anybody down. They'll recruit anyone. They recruited the less than suburbanite kids in the 60s to be a part of their radical groups. They recruited the high school dropouts. There's no different than what's going on right now. I don't see a difference. They just put another banner, drop another banner on you, and there you go. Just cover up the other banner. It's not "We shall overcome," it's BLM now. They just put another banner over the movement, and here we go. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much. So we are going to move on to the next story. I hope you guys are doing well. So I stumbled onto something over the weekend that was a little bit, many of these things are pretty disturbing overall, but I'm going to take you, I'll take you to that particular story later. But let's go to Nigeria. And you might think, oh, we're going to Nigeria. I'm going to take you there because I think something similar, we have some parallels, some cultural parallels that are happening here. And once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So I'm going to be taking you to that story. Thank you guys so much for coming in on your Monday. Thank you for sharing it out. All right, so here we are with the next story here. So this story comes from the AmericanMagazine.org. Okay, so this is entitled, "Are Nigerians Christians the Target of Genocide?" So I'm also going to bring you back to the States, where if you're not looking, whether you're Christian or not, well, you can't exactly go to church like at will. And in most places you can't. You've got your restrictions and you've got all those things going on. But then if we just go to the other side, the other side of the globe, we have this article that comes from Kevin Clark. All right, so I'll give you a little bit on this article here. It says, "Are Nigerian Christians the target of a genocide?" That is the conclusion of a number of religious freedom analysts and Nigerian clergy who joined a recent online press call. The Boko Haram Islamic militants have for years raged against minority Christian communities in northern Nigeria, and their intention to drive out, quote, Western, end quote, influences and establish an Islamic state in northern Nigeria seems clear, but increasingly brutal attacks on Christian villages in Nigeria's central, quote, middle belt, end quote, region have been attributed to Fulani cattle herders and have been explained as the result of conflict over diminishing resources. So the parallel here is that we've seen, of course, we had what the Sean Kings call for, the removal of statues and Jesus and his, Jesus, I'm paraphrasing, for lack of a better term, for calling for the removal of statues and Jesus and his crew, and white Jesus being pulled down and demanding that. And I've heard all kinds of things. And of course, we did a couple of stories on some of these cultural norms, or what they want. They want to make these things normal. And then of course, in many places here in the States, you can go to a liquor store, you can go protest, you can do everything, but what can you not do what guidelines are the most restrictive, or in many cases have been suppressed the most? It's been that of the church, the Christian church. So shout out to everybody that's in the stream. So I'll keep going here. So You have and Western influence. Western influence. Well, that puts us right there. It's these are global. It's a global coup against Western civilization or Western influences. All right, so just going to give you just a little bit on this, but advocates gathered for an online press call hosted by the International Advocacy Group in defense of Christians on June 25th, and they believe that Christians are being explicitly targeted in the ongoing violence in an effort to drive them off their land. They argued that the United States and the Nigerian central government must come up with a comprehensive plan to better protect the region's Christians. All right, Frank Wolf is a former Republican member of Congress from Virginia, bluntly denounced the U.S. efforts in Nigeria so far, urging the creation of a special envoy to investigate the conflict. He said he was dismayed, quote, for America to see genocide and not do anything about it, end quote. All right, so, quote, I believe it will lead to what has happened in Darfur and Rwanda. I give Congress an F. It has failed, end quote. Mr. Wolf, a longtime campaigner for religious freedom, said, quote, every day there is a delay in appointing this special envoy. More people will die, end quote. All right. He warned that if nothing more is done to protect Christians, the crisis will not be limited to fractious regions of Nigeria. Quote, so goes Nigeria, so goes West Africa, end quote, Mr. Wolf said, adding, and quote, and some people say, so goes Nigeria, so goes all of Africa. Well, and then here again, I'm even seeing another parallel here that it seems like many of these governments, not just an example from the local governments here, from the mayors, from some of the governors, many people seem to be standing down and allowing. It's not the violence that we're seeing. It's not just in this example, but we've seen what's happening. Just for instance, in Chicago, the mayor stands down. They stand down until somebody comes to their home. Now, we did last week, we talked about Carmen Best, the police chief out of Seattle. She would not denounce any violent acts, or she would not denounce any group specifically. She starts calling on and writing letters to the city council to do what's right. And, a chief from another jurisdiction ended up protecting her home along with some citizens that decided to do that. And what I found interesting about that violence was that the citizens were apologizing to Carmen Best for what she was going through. I mean, my gosh, what exactly is happening? Talk about topsy-turvy. They were apologizing to Carmen Best for these rioters and looters trying to attack her home. But does she offer any apology for not doing her job? I mean, we talked about Mr. Anderson and the Chaz and the kids that were murdered in the chop zone. Where did that apology come from? She never issued one. In fact, Trump ended up calling Mr. Anderson about the loss of his son. Nobody, but then she's got the chief has a huge problem when they come to her home. It just seems to be, we have a serious problem on a global scale. There just seems to be, there's like a huge coup against humanity, like the vulnerable. We have two different types of sheep. We have the sheep that just go along with everything, that don't trust, that don't check anything. They don't question or fact check anything. And then we have the other sheep that are just, we have the sheep that are being attacked on perhaps the premise of, the religion or as a conflict. I mean, you have many conflicts that are going on, and we see people, governments and local and national, we see people standing down. Like, it's almost like the death is what we're seeing a lot of, and we're going to see more. The more people that stand down, the more death we're going to see. And that goes for the US in these major cities. All right, so I'm going to finish that one up. Thank you guys for tuning in. So I was just thinking, our servants, these Congress people, they need to do their jobs here in the States, is what they need to do. I agree with wholeheartedly that, of course, that internationally there needs to be peace, and these people need to be brought to justice. But we have to get this place under control. With all the foreign aid and all the entanglements that we have, you would think that they would know everything. But I just think that we're just not. We're too infiltrated, and we've got too many elites that are running the roost. Like, we've lost control, and I'm saying it on a global scale. We are at the mercy of megalomaniacs. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. According to George Stanton, the founding president and chair of Genocide Watch, reported that since 2012, attacks by Fulani raiders, Boko Haram, and other militants have killed as many as 27,000 Christians in Nigeria, more than died at the hands of ISIS in Syria and Iraq. He argued that the nature of the attacks clearly fit the UN definition of the acts of genocide. Well, I'm not going to go talk about the UN because that's another story. Quote, they now arrive with truckloads of fighters and simply massacre a Christian village and leave the Muslim village alone, end quote, he said. The quote, central government is acting like a bystander, end quote, as the attacks continue, he said. So where have we seen, who else's government is acting like a bystander? So there you go. If you do nothing, then you're complicit. And we've seen that happen. We've seen this topsy-turvy behavior. I mean, are these people really smoking their own shoes? Do they think they're propelling the world? They're pushing the world forward, and we're going to have a gregarious world with all this violence, this unspoken and unmitigated violence and unresolved violence? So I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on to a rant here, but the attacks primarily on Christian farming communities have been described as a result of tension over land use and traditional grazing rights. But these advocates say that the narrative is belied by the clear and repeated targeting of unarmed Christians by well-armed Fulani raiders. Who is arming the attackers? What their long-term goals are remain critical issues to explore. According to Mr. Stanton, the researchers at the Genocide Watch believe that Islamist extremists targeting Christian villages are acquiring weapons, quote, from corrupt Nigerian army officers, end quote, and have been receiving financial support from inside Nigeria. He believes, however, the militants may soon be able to tap into a worldwide support network among Islamist extremist groups. Quote, Boko Haram has already said it is part of ISIS, end quote, he said. And quote, and we now have evidence that the Fulani militias are linked up with that group as well. Quote, money can come from all over the world, including the Middle East, and the danger is that this thing could blow up and become a huge problem, end quote. So there again, if it's a problem there, it's a small world. I think I learned the clear definition of that anything that's happened, like many people, they may not really pay attention to what's going on in other parts of the world. But I think it's clear that those things are very much people that have these kind of crusades or these war that engage in war. It's going to come here. It may be here already. I don't know, but I'm just thinking it's something to watch, and it has to be. You just can't really be just like novice and docile about what happens worldwide, because we've got examples here. We've got there's a huge struggle going on right now. And I'm not sure if it's the elites that are battling each other for who's going to be number one. I'm not sure, but this pandemic, this crisis has opened the door for so many vulnerable communities. Now it's opened the door. It's not just opening the door, but it's shining the light on the weak. And for those of us that have resources, we should be ashamed of ourselves for not using our resources to advance ourselves rather than clinging to victimhood. So I'm probably going to wrap this one up with just this statement here. It says, the future of Nigeria is bleak for Christians, in quote, said Benjamin Kwashi, the Anglican Archbishop of Jos. I have seen far more funerals than I have seen weddings and wedding ceremonies. He charged the Nigerian government has abandoned its responsibility to maintain security and protect the vulnerable. He added, quote, a good number of the dead are children and women, the helpless, people that rely on protection of the government. Oh my gosh, can you guys not see the parallels here? Who's not, do we not, is that not what's going on here in many places? And I'm saying we have governments that are not protecting its own communities, its own people. Chicago is a prime example, not just Chicago, any of these major cities where these mayors are not doing anything. They're not doing anything. You've had many children murdered here in the States. You've had helpless people attacked. And that's why, and that this goes back to this goes into the whole defund the police argument. These people don't have an option. They don't have a police, apparently. But we're going to have the utopians and the utopian fairies tell us that we need to defund the police, rendering our women and children helpless without any extra arm of protection. Am I saying that that's the only level of protection? Well, we do have the Second Amendment. We do have that here. We've got at least two things that they don't have. Apparently they don't have a Second Amendment. Apparently they don't have cops. So I'm just thinking that it just seems to be, that's a pandemic in itself. That's a pandemic in itself. So I want to finish this out, but it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. But here it is. As Archbishop Kwashi said, quote, this thing is systemic, it is planned, it is calculated, end quote. He complained that, quote, the world doesn't want to hear that, including the Nigerian government, end quote. Quote, they have always explained it away as farmers and herders clash, end quote, he said. Quote, there is no doubt that in history, communities have always had their clashes. The Fulani, whom we know, have always had their clashes with local people. They are usually settled, but this one is a different one because these killers are well armed, end quote. And he said they come to slaughter and burn, not to settle differences over land or grazing rights. Quote, these are calculated systemic international killings of people and driving them away from their land, end quote, Archbishop Kwashi said. Quote, every time we had to raise our voices to say this is going on, government officials and human rights advocates always produce a political narrative to say that it is farmers and herders clashing. Quote, that is an evil narrative to cover up, end quote, he charged. So there again, this is a huge parallel to what we see going on here in the States. Whether you're talking about rioting, whether you're talking about defunding the police, this is the same. We have cover-ups like that going on right now. We really do. And so I'm just thinking we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot from what we see going on in other places, because to me, it's a heads up. You know, we have corruption here. And I think for a long time, we've been under the impression, or maybe most of us have been under the impression, if you're not, whether you're politically involved or been engaged or wherever you stand, you may think that, you know, this country, maybe you thought this country was not laden with corruption. But as you can see, It is. We do have a level of corruption here. We have it in the media. We have it. We have the infiltration in our government, and we have it even on local government. So it's a lot. So I'm going to put that link in the stream. I'm going to put that link in the stream because it's pretty lengthy, but I thought you might see something there that might be revealing or maybe even interesting there. So just shout out to everybody in the stream. I want to take an opportunity to shout out everybody individually that's here right now. And thank you guys so much for coming in. This has been a bit of a wordy, a deep kind of a stream so far. Lots pretty wordy, but I'll bring you some sound bites ASAP. Shout out to the rapper 10,000. Shout out to Luciano. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H. Shout out to Old Head Deuce. Thank you so much. Shout out to Killer Whale Channels, Theology Forums. You guys check each other out. Get to know each other. I don't mind that on covert level, even though it's not a growth stream. Shout out to Annie Asi from Taiwan. Thank you so much. Sanget Ko, shout out to you. The Rapper 10,000, Battery Addiction, shout out to you. I think I saw Newman Outdoors. Shout out to you, Newman Outdoors. Alien Believers, shout out to you. Thank you guys so much for sharing out the stream. I really appreciate it. Theology Forums, thank you so much. Robert L., thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. David Furman and DJ Vision Barnett, I really appreciate it. It's nice to see you guys in here. It's been a long time. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. All right. So we're going to keep going here. Hope everybody's well. I may open this segment up just to have a little bit of a clip for you right now. I'm going to take you over to Chicago for just a second. Thank you guys so much. Let's see. And those of you, the patrons that are in here, if you guys can go ahead and drop your link, it would help out tremendously. Sometimes I just can't, I don't really have the time to do it. But you guys are welcome to drop on this stream. Go ahead and drop your link. Just have a little mini break here and see what's going on. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black this one out. A wordy day, a wordy show.
You look like a real criminal. What's these pants looking like, y'all? What's these Lucky Brands? Nobody want that shit. Oh, shit. My head getting curly as fuck out of my hood, sweating out this shit. I should go back up there because there ain't shit going on. You look like a real criminal.
All right, guys. Look like just a bunch of people, rioters and looters just cruising through the mall. Wow. I am, there doesn't seem to be a bit of a slowdown on these riotings and lootings. There just doesn't seem to be, there just doesn't seem to be an end to it. It seems like it's growing. It's growing. It's not slowing down. So shout out to the rapper 10,000. Mayor Bitchfoot has to go. I would agree. I don't know how to make how I don't know exactly the path to that, but I would agree. Share your comment here. These rioters purposely attacking police in their own homes. Oh wow. One group used a shotgun to blow open one's door, which is fair game to shoot these rioters. But you know what? See, there are things I want to say this. I'm not from Chicago by any means, and I don't have an inside track on Chicago, but I do know that they have a history of what I consider professional, radical. They're established very well in their tactics. They've been doing it for years. In fact, there's a ton of elite that basically fund that are willing to, they want to publish the police officers' names and probably addresses. I understand the rapper, I really do. I mean, it's very disgusting. It very much is. Actually, I'm going to put the link out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a question out here for you guys, and I'll give you a couple of minutes. So if you could if you want to come in, we'll do one at a time. So I guarantee nobody's knocking down the door to get in here. So you'll get your turn. But it's a very destabilized situation. And these mayors, like Lightfoot, she's just adding to the flavor. She's a part of the problem and not the solution. And these people are out here destroying property and destroying people's lives, and they're going to go back to their lives. I don't know whether she'll be targeted next. It's possible, but I just don't know. I mean, and back in the day, let me say this. And I tend to quote this movie, that I don't know what's happened with, like the spirit of our country is very much different than 1776. It very much is. I don't know. I can't say that we have militias, but are they going to engage these people? I just don't, it's like these major cities, they've become, they've become their own. They've become their own. They're part of their own demise, and I just don't know. I don't know what can be done. I think it's overdue, whatever it is, and it's going to be a lot of bloodshed, is what's going to end up being. They're going to be useful idiots to any movement. And that's what they were. That's what they were in the 60s. And that's what they are right now. They think they're acting on behalf of any of these groups or any of these people that say, oh, I'm here in the name of BLM. I'm here in the name of Antifa. They're all useful idiots. But, the destruction is encouraged. I mean, come on, you guys have heard leaders, you've heard people say that they need the riots to continue so that Biden can win. But this is it. This is what they do. We've talked about the whole communist playbook. You divide the people, come up with your little groups like BLM, Antifa, and all this, pretend like you've got all this popular support. And then when that doesn't work, you start, and people aren't complying and they're not going along with it, then you start neutralizing the opposition. You start the rioting, you start the terrorizing, you start the gut checking. That's what they're doing right now. And even killing people. Back in the day, they would cut out a man's tongue to control the opposition. or to neutralize the opposition. You got controlled and neutralized opposition measures here. And yeah, so you have a group of elites that live in Chicago, or they're from around the world, that they want police officers' numbers to be on their backs. They want to, their utopia is what they want. They want to overthrow this US government. They want to overthrow it. They don't really care what they have to say. They're doing it in the name of. They don't care. And you have people that have the financiers to do it. You have it. So shout out to everybody that's in the stream. So let me go ahead and put this link in here. I will do it. So I hope you guys are doing well where you are. Let's see. Hope you guys are doing well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just go ahead and put this link out. So if you'd like to come up, I'll give you two to 3 minutes. Hope you guys are doing well on your Monday. So yeah, so if you decide to come up, that's fine, and that's great. I just asked you to keep it we'll keep it 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, and then just wait for the next person. If there's nobody in queue, I'll take you one at a time either way. So if you happen to bump into somebody that's already up, then that's fine. But yeah, it's so much going on as usual, and I just don't see, that Mayor Lightfoot is a disaster. But all I can see is that more of these cities are going to start to, they're going to rebel, and they have their useful idiots well established. Shout out to Pammy Clyde. Thank you so much for coming in. Let's see, there's a vid of plainclothes cops with bricks ready to smash windows. People were going to do a citizen's arrest. His wife. Ay, ay, ay. It's just nonstop. Just when you think you've seen it all, you've got something else. So let's go have another story for you where we're going to have the indoor services. Indoor services at California church sparked confrontation between protesters and congregants. All right, so I'm going to bring you that coverage. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's see if we can share this. We'll come back to, of course, the cultural things, but just one other story to share with you. Shout out to everybody that's in the stream. Thank you so much for coming in. All right, just a really quick pause here. Let me get for the story for the main. So basically, what you have is a montage here, and that's also including the riots and whatnot in Chicago, but also taking you into you've got some activity out of South Dakota where um, thousands of bikers clash. But I'm going to go ahead and do this one. I'll give you the text from this one. But protesters and congregants clashed on Sunday after a California church held indoor services in defiance of a judge's temporary restraining order, according to a report. Rob McCoy, the pastor at Ventura County's Godspeed Calvary Chapel, held morning service on Sunday in the face of the judge's order supporting state and local health mandates aimed at preventing the spread of the pandemic. McCoy's decision joins other pastors in the state to challenge the coronavirus mandates that they say unfairly targets places of worship. His decision to hold the service drew supporters and detractors. So with that said, I'm kind of wrapping you guys back into that whole, I do think that Christianity is under attack here. That's my assertion. It's not just under attack in Nigeria, whether it's from Islamic extremist or whatever. It's the same. There's the same type of it's just done in a different way here. They're using a different medium. They're using controlled opposition to attack it. You got your SJWs attacking it. You've got your mayors, your local governments regulating things. You can go to the liquor store, do all these things. You can go out and riot, loot, steal, murder. You can do all those things. But you've got you're going to be extremely limited, or in many places, you're not going to be able to go and attend at all. Shout out to Keith the Faith. Thank you so much. Good morning to you. So let's keep going with that one, and then I'll finish playing the clip on that one. All right. So according to this quote, there's plenty of room to have beautiful outdoor services, and he chooses to break the rules. And I think that's not right, end quote. Shanna Radishaw told Fox 11 Los Angeles, quote, I think God wants people to live and be healthy and not spread sickness when we don't need to, end quote. Others said that attending church was their right to freedom of expression and worship, and nothing replaces the feeling of going to an in-person service, according to the station. All right, quote, we're seeing a loss of all rights, but the right of the church. This is the foundation of this country, and we're very serious about it. So yeah, we will go to jail for it, end quote, said Jenny Murray. Quote, being in community with your church actually means being able to come together and feel that power. And I do believe there is an agenda out there of people trying to separate us, end quote, Sandra Ephraimson added. Okay, so you have live streams of the morning services showed a maskless McCoy. This is your pastor, not your pastor, but the pastor McCoy, standing before what he called a, quote, room full of people, end quote, with most captured on video without mask on. So apparently this was the Sunday morning live stream. So let's play a little bit of that. Hope you guys are doing well. This is not this is, I guess I have to make this disclaimer in these times. This is not me professing or impeding on anyone's spirituality or religious beliefs. If you want to plug your ears, you feel free to do so. But this is going to be played right now. This is a clip from the Godspeed Calvary Chapel Sunday AM live stream with Pastor Rob McCoy. And so I'll play a little bit of this for you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Wait. I need you guys to stand back up for a minute. You guys thought you were done singing. For those of you that didn't know, it's Pastor Rob's birthday tomorrow. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. 56. Happy birthday, dear Mom. Happy birthday to you. He's fired. Thanks, man. Bless you. 56 makes it the second anniversary of my. You can't even divide that right, can you? 25. 28th? Yeah, second anniversary of my 28th birthday. I look pretty good. For an 80-year-old. No. Okay, so let's get into the word because that's why we came. And if you have a Bible, open up to Acts chapter 8. Acts chapter 8. I wanted to say thank you to all of you. There are a number of folks visiting from all over the country, actually. One church showed up and said, we don't need to sit in on the service. Apparently they've heard me preach before, but they said, we don't need to sit in on the service. We're just going to stay outside so that we can be the ones to take the citation, so all of you are free to worship. It's hard to continue when you realize that. All of you, thank you so much. We didn't set out to do this. I signed up to be a pastor of a church 20 years ago. I love this community. I ran for office. And if people think I'm doing it for notoriety, I gave up that office. God is everything to me. And the mic's a little hot. If you can turn it down, it's kind of, I'm worried that their fillings are picking up a radio signal. But here we are, unlikely. And, I haven't been doing anything different those 20 years. But all of a sudden, I'm seeing a room full of people who realize that liberty is not man's idea, it's God's idea. And you'll be reviled, and you'll be ridiculed, and you'll be maligned. But you're doing it for those who ridicule and malign you. You're doing it for the ones who are protesting. You're doing it for the ones whose narrative is different than the truth itself. Because you're fighting for truth and you're fighting for freedom. And the idea that this nation was conceived in liberty and dedicated that proposition, that all men are created equal, that this government doesn't give us our rights. God gave us these rights. And, yeah, okay. They keep having to stop the teleprompter while no, I'm kidding. We don't have a teleprompter.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So there again, I think he makes a fine point there. I'm not going to continue this stream. His stream on this, but he does make an excellent point, a point that I go back to is, most people, well, not most people, some people, they would rather rely on the government, or the government has become their God, or at some point the government maybe became their God, and they've traded everything that they believed in, or anything that they believed in, for that protection, or for that well-being, that extra, what they perceive as, for that extra protection, or for that extra financial provision. And it's actually showing up everywhere. You know, I've even said this before. I think I'm going to say this about the Black community. For one, I do believe that the Black community had a much stronger community and a stronger following when they were much more rooted in their beliefs. But instead, somewhere the con came in, and it's almost like it was almost traded instantly for civil rights, or, you know, we'll protect you, we'll do this, we'll make everything all right, just do this. And from that point on, they're going to do whatever works better for their standard, or whatever the government can provide for them. So I can say, I honestly think that, like, the family structure, when we see these things, you know, like the more broken, we had much less broken families. We had higher numbers in whole families. And it just seems like, you know, the government became the daddies, got into the women's bedrooms, and now all of a sudden they don't need a man. They not only do you not need a man, I guess you don't need any values. You just do whatever the government's going to give you all the security you need. The government can make things like inequities better for you. I can see that. And that's just, you know, that's my assertion. And, you know, I just think, I mean, that's history. That's what history shows the stats pre 1960. But they came, all these liberals and these progressives, they come in here and they euphemize things that Black people didn't even believe in. Black people didn't believe in having children out of wedlock at that time. I happen to be Black. That's the only reason I'm saying. You know, the morality was high. And now, where is it? You know, even your welfare systems, that, you know, they ask you these questions. You know, is there a man at home? You know, those are your government rights, right? But your human rights, those are God-given rights. They are not. The government can't give you what you already have. But they can certainly, you know, the whole idea of government was to protect the rights, protect these rights protect the people's rights. And then I even mentioned a quote before, the one from James Madison that said, if men were angels, we would not need government. But look what happened with the government. The government was never meant for the government to be as large and as dominating as it is. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much. So I will round that one out with just the verbiage, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I hope you're not, if you're offended, or are you thinking I'm infringing on your liberties or your spirituality, that's not the intent. That is not the goal or the objective of this show. But I appreciate you for coming in, for indulging in and coming into the channel. So, quote, this is, I'm seeing a room full of people who realize that liberty is not man's idea, it's God's idea, end quote. So that you got that directly from the pastor. So I think, you know, maybe people are willing to take more risk right now, because I think they're seeing what's at stake here. It's not going to be just one liberty that's at stake. There's many. No matter what you believe, you may not have the rights to do any of what you used to do, what you're doing today, if things continue in the manner that it is. So this was a Ventura County. So here it is. The pastor on Friday had vowed to continue holding the service despite the Ventura County Superior Court Judge Matthew Guasco issuing the temporary restraining order, citing, quote, an immediate threat to public health and safety due to the 2019 novel coronavirus, end quote. Okay, so worshipers line up to take communion on Palm Sunday outside of the Godspeed Calvary Chapel in Newbury Park, California. So that's where this photo comes from. But On a scale, quote, on a scale of 1 to 10 of most immediate irreparable harm possible, this is a 10, end quote, Glasgow said during a hearing. It doesn't get much more immediate or irreparable than the threat that a lot of people are going to spread a contagious and deadly disease. I mean, can you guys see it's hypocrisy here? It's not, it's beyond hypocrisy. Because we even had Gavin Newsom even say that he was going to make special provisions. Special provisions were made for protests. And to me, that special provision has been made for terrorism. You're making special provision for that. Meanwhile, you want to, the only thing I'm going to be honest, guys, the only thing I think that's stopping these people is the Second Amendment. I think that's the only thing from stopping just all out terror and massacre is we have the Second Amendment. Some people throw President Trump in there, but I'm going to say my baseline would be the Second Amendment is what you have. That is the only thing stopping this terrorism, which I do believe that is a controlled opposition. That's one of the things that's standing between it. And I'm just saying that I don't mean to be, again, Debbie Downer or whatever, but I'm saying I'm not convinced that the cure to this terrorism or this coup is going to happen is November 3rd or even November 4th. In fact, I think it could very well continue. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for all that you do and for coming in today. Really appreciate it. So we'll probably keep going for like maybe 10 minutes more. And there is a link out there if anybody wants to share any of their share anything, whatever you feel like sharing, it's available. We'll keep it 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll just take everybody one at a time. We won't do two on the screen at a time. Hi, Keith of Faith. Nice to see you. Hope you do well on this Monday. And then I did say to everybody, for the patrons out there, you guys drop your link in the stream. You can do that. It's easier if you can do that. Yeah, go ahead and do that. I'll try to do some myself, but sometimes, I just want to like to hear from you guys. Shout out to Bill Mason. I'm not sure. Shout out to you. Says the mask are a bunch of crap. They were trying to make a one world government in WO. Shout out to you, Bill Mason. Really appreciate you for coming in. I'm not sure if you're new to the stream, but thank you so much. You're welcome here just as well. Really appreciate it. And let's see, what else do we have? So yeah, I just don't, but honestly, I'm not sure, because I don't think for a second that whatever the outcome of November 3rd, and if my thing is, are we going to have results? Are there going to be viable reportings and accurate results? If we can be this misled on, if we can be as misled and duped on this whole pandemic, I'm not convinced that the election it's not going to be like it's not going to be like the previous election. It's not. And I've said before, and I deleted that question, but and I'll put it up here right now. Has America seen its last free and fair election? And whatever you want to attribute it to is fine. That's why I put the link in the stream. So you can feel free to engage on that if you want. But I'm just thinking, even in Nazi Germany, of course, pre-Nazi Germany, those people didn't realize, you don't realize when you're voting in that last one, you may not have realized it. Maybe it's come and passed. But this one is certainly, how fair is it going to be? But I will tell you this, don't despair. Don't quite despair, because I'm hearing that the postal office does not want to, I'm thinking that they're not really, they've opined on their participation in the mail-in voter process. Hope you guys are doing well on your Monday. Thank you guys so much. Because honestly, you know, with the way the mail is already, can they actually handle any more? Can they actually handle any? Can they handle that many pieces of mail? I mean, give me a break. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much. And Bill Mason, it's nice to meet you. I really appreciate you for coming in, Bill Mason. Thank you. So yeah, we're going to, but I do think that there's much to be desired here. But I'm just thinking, you know, this is, I don't know, like if we throw the democratic process, then what's after this election? Who knows what the next one would look like? Or, you know, it's just, you know, I think we've always been hailed as like the beacon, not just the beacon of liberty, but, you know, the beacon of hope. And I just think that we're losing so much ground on that. Oh, you're so welcome, Bill Mason. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone for taking care with those thumbs up and thumbs downs and shares. And it really makes a difference on the Channelytics. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. But we're going to continue to follow these stories, especially with the religious. I just think there's a lot of the freedoms and the liberties, the implications here. You know, I think there's a lot of implications here, and we see a lot of those from around the world. I mean, you don't need to be in Nigeria right now to be attacked or to be suppressed, you know, in your religious freedom. You're right here. I mean, it's just that I just advise everyone, don't be a useful idiot in this situation. There's a lot at stake here, you know. There's some battles that if you lose, some things you can't get back. And when I talk about, you know, losing battles, some things we can't get back. And they are just, it's almost, there is a concerted effort to ruin this next generation, to ruin it for generations to come, whether it's education, whether it's mathematics, whether it's grammar. I mean, those are staples. I mean, but what are you going to do with a less educated or less autonomous society? What are you going to do? You're going to control them. You're going to be easier to control. You're going to be much easier to control if they are successful with more government. The future of the U.S. Postal Service, I'm not sure. It doesn't look too good. I mean, they've had issues in the past, but I just think that the management is very bad. I don't think they can manage mail-in voting very well. I really don't. And it would be nice if they would stop conflating voting by mail versus the absentee process. It would be nice if they would do that. Hope you guys are doing well. And of course, blame Trump for undercutting the post office, right? Because he's just doing that to exacerbate inequities, right? Hope you guys are doing well. So since I have no one coming in, I appreciate you guys for coming in on your Monday. And I think this will be our new time. So I'm going to be posting that. So we will go from 9 to 10:30, 10:30-ish. if all possible, this is a lighter week. There may be a moonlight stream, so I'll try to get that out to you as soon as possible. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Shout out to all the loyal patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, Definition of Anarchy, Angel's Army, The Formal Angel Munez Variety Show, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, Let the Truth Be Told, and shout out to Cold War Jesus. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. And I am a little bit delayed on some things that I have planned for the community tab, but I'm pretty sure something else will be rolled out there this week. I may get it out today. I think there's going to be some merchandise coming to the channel, and I may be able to get some of that information out to you. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment. And please stay tuned. I hope to get some more videos out. A little bit behind on those. It's a little bit of technical difficulties. Not much, just a little. Really appreciate it. So here's a link if you're interested in that. Also, keep an eye on the central community tab is what I'm referring to, as well as the Patreon communities tab. I really appreciate that, guys, so much. So we're going to go ahead and wrap in this particular stream. And so what we're going to do is I will officially put it up today. We will be doing Monday, Wednesdays at 9. That's 9 PST. So if you're on the East Coast, that's going to put you around, put you at 12 noon. I think that'll put you at 11 on the Central Standard Time. And Mountain Time for people like, I don't know, is there somebody in the stream? Shout out to Keith the Faith if you're still around here. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. If you're on Mountain Time, get you in here on Mountain Time. I think that might put you at 10. Maybe it's 9 or 10. I don't want to get that wrong, but thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Keep your eyes open, guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next stream. If there's a chance, I still may do flash streams. Now, that's another thing that I'm doing. I might just flash anytime. If you're around, you're always welcome. So I may very well just flash stream. But Monday, Wednesdays are what we're going to go with. And we may have, if I need to adjust anything else, I'll keep you up to date on that. So I'll see you guys on the next stream, live stream, in the comment section, or a video, or even in a moonlight stream. We'll see what happens later today. You guys have a great rest of your day.